Can everyone hear me out there okay?
Yep.
All right, beautiful. It's been a while since they brought me up here. Any of you who have seen me preach before know that I tend to ramble a little bit, that I have a little bit of a malfunction that goes on between my ears, so I am going to be a little bit chaotic today in all likelihood. I'm going to be walking around, so if you get dizzy or motion sick, you may want to take something for that right up front. And I have a few hand signs that you can give me, because as I ramble, this message could either be very, very short, or I might be able to get you out in time for your New Year's Eve party. So we will see how that goes today. So, this means I'm hungry. Can we hurry this up a little bit? This means I'm tired. And through that, I should be able to gauge how fast I need to go. If anyone passes out, I will find a stick, I'll poke you, and we'll all be good.
We got all day.
We got all day? All right, sounds good to me. So, Pastor Shane asked me to preach for the last Sunday of the year, which is both an honor for me and maybe a punishment for you. We will find out sooner or later which one of those two it's going to be for you. But we are continuing our services, our messages on children's stories. Now, I was asked to pick a children's story. I decided to go with Esther for a couple of different reasons. First off, it's one of my wife's favorite stories from the Bible. She just loves the book of Esther. And there was a certain passage within Esther that really stuck out to me, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. But because I don't think the way that normal people think, I'm going to give a little bit of a recap of Esther, if you can pull that up real quick, so that way I'm not missing any part of the story. But I'm not going to be talking about the story in particular. I'm not going to be digging into what the story goes into, but I'm going to be talking a little bit more about what goes on around the story and how that can actually apply to us in our everyday lives. So, a quick recap of Esther. We start off that the queen of Persia gets deposed because she made her husband angry. Esther gets chosen by the king. There's a man named Haman who gets big mad over a little bad. He takes that big mad and decides that he wants to remove the Jewish people. Our heroine of the story, Esther, steps up and she's able to outsmart the man. He is then graded by his own rubric towards the end of the story. And there's a happy ending for Esther and the Jewish people. So quick recap of the story. It's great for anything that we're looking into. If you want to give the kids a nice story about how good triumphs over evil and we need to be wise in how we handle things. As I go through the Bible, I tend to try to find applications for real life. How are things going to be able to affect us? How are things going to allow us to improve the way that we handle the world? And the one way that we are going to be able to do that in most cases, if I can get my thing to cooperate here on my end, is by working with people, dealing with people. Has anyone out there been able to figure out a way to get through life without having to deal with people in one way or another? I have not also. People are both the best and the worst part of having to go out there and live and do anything. So I find that as we are getting ready to move into the next year, we should probably take a little bit of time and learn what the Bible says about how to deal with people. And I'm doing it in a little bit of a strange way here with the book of Esther. So, with that, there are 3 points that I'm going to be running through here. I do have a PowerPoint back there. Eventually we might be able to get it up there. But the first thing that we're going to be talking about is the dangers of pride. About the benefits of dealing with people with humility. And the final part I'm going to be talking about is being able to work in your own boots. And that'll make more sense as I move forward with what we're going to be talking about today. The first point that we wanted to talk about is the dangers of pride and poor counsel. So in Esther 1, we get a small glimpse into a relationship that is just riddled with the sin of pride. We have King Xerxes, who is a very, very rich man. How many of you have ever thrown a party? A few of you. How many of you had a party that lasted more than one day? Aww. It's like I'm going to have to throw a party sooner or later. King Xerxes shows off his wealth for 180 days straight, and then he finishes it off with a 7-day banquet. The man liked to show off. At the same time that he was going through that, this is all in Esther chapter 1, verse 4, or chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. His wife, Queen Vashti, we'd be on the next slide, guys. Thanks for getting it up. Queen Vashti, at the same time, held a banquet within the palace of Persia there, King Xerxes' palace. She held that banquet for the women because they needed to be separated at that point in time. If we move into Esther chapter 1, verse 10, the queen was called before the entire assembly in front of the noblemen, so that way Xerxes could show her off. Now, men, I know we love our women, right? We like to show off a little bit. I know I've been with my wife for more than 20 years. I still think she's the most beautiful girl in the room. I bet. But I also know with how much she loves me and how much she respects me, if I asked her to come up here in front of all of you and do a little twirl for me, I'd probably get turned down. And we don't know her reasons, but Queen Vashti decided that she was not going to make an appearance that day. This is where pride falls in. Now, we don't know her reasons, like I said there. We don't know if she was tired. We don't know if she had a headache. We don't know if she was cleaning up after the banquet and the kids came through and destroyed the room. But she decided not to show that day. King Xerxes, being a prideful man, got a little bit angry. He decided to go to his noblemen, the people who were the masters of the law, the people who took time to study the law. This would be like the equivalent of going in front of judges and lawyers and talking to them and saying, "My wife did not listen to me. What can I do about it?" So, biblical principle, gentlemen, if you tell your wife that I want the laundry done and the dishes done and it's not done by the time you get home, you can call the cops. Wow. Dead room today. All right, mini sermon on that. Just because something is in the Bible doesn't mean that it's taken in context. So regardless of the person standing behind the pulpit, whether they are talking with confidence and with authority, doesn't necessarily mean that they are taking what you were supposed to be looking at in context. So, quick example, micro sermon. I like to talk. Moving on from that. They decided, while talking with these other men, these other prideful men, that if he allowed her to disobey him, that their wives might get the idea that they can disobey also, so we need to do something about this. We're going to make it so she is not going to be able to come and see me ever again. And he wrote it into law. That sounds like an argument my kids have. You broke my Lego. I don't ever want to see you again, ever. But he was a king. And when he said it, it was written into law, and she was not allowed to enter his presence for the rest of her life. That might be a little bit prideful. That's not a great way to run a relationship. To run a relationship on pride. Simple communication, being able to talk to somebody, being able to understand where they're coming from, what their reasons are, allows us to be able to have a much smoother transition through life and to be able to not only understand others, but have them understand us. It's an important lesson as we are moving forward through this year. Think about the times and the communications that you're going to be having throughout this year. try to remain humble. Try to take time to understand a person's perspective as you are moving forward, talking with them, interacting with them, making sure that we don't make the same kind of mistake that they're making here and get to the point where someone wants to take a look at us and say, you know what, I never want to see that person again because they treated me with pride instead of coming at me like a person. We go to the next slide, please. Moving into the benefits of humility and making hard decisions. King Xerxes, when he got together with all of those men, he had a bunch of yes men who were worried about trying to make sure that they were saving their own pride. He had a bandwagon. He had peer pressure of everyone saying, yeah, man, do it, do it, do it. Because it was going to be easy and it was going to make life easy for them. If we take a look at Esther 4, 1 through 8 here, this is where Esther finds out that the Jewish people have been condemned. So I am skipping ahead of a little bit of the story here. Like I said, I'm working around the events outside of the story as a whole here. When she finds out that her people have been condemned, she is put in a position where she is nobility. She is royalty. She has a direct line to a king to be able to try to make something happen. Mordecai asks her to go and speak on behalf of the Jewish people. To go and talk to them, talk to the king, and try to get this ruling pulled back so that way her people can live. She is afraid. And she's afraid for good reason. Number one, she is a Jew, and the Jewish people have been condemned to death. So she goes in front of the king and starts talking on behalf of her people, the Jews. She's putting herself in the same position as the rest of them, being condemned to death. Beyond that, she can be killed as she approaches the king without being summoned. I can't even give my wife a funny look if she comes before me without being summoned. Because then I end up getting a black eye. It's not fun. But if she goes before the king without him actually calling her, if he doesn't approve, she can be killed right there on the spot. She hasn't been summoned before him in 30 days, so I don't know what she did. But he hasn't called for her for over a month. And beyond that, she has the knowledge that the previous queen, when she displeased the king, she was deposed. She was never allowed to enter his presence ever again. Would you say that she maybe had a reason to be afraid of going and talking to the king on behalf of the decree that he made? Yeah, very possibly. We can move on to the next slide, please. She has this conversation with Mordecai, her uncle, that she doesn't really want to go in front of him because she can be killed. But this is where good counsel comes in, where wise counsel comes in, where stepping up out of in a place of humility, doing what you were supposed to do regardless of how it makes you feel, comes into place. She made the hard decision because of something that Mordecai said here. He points out that there are consequences for both action and inaction. And that is the same in our everyday lives. Whether you decide that you are going to talk to somebody, whether you decide that you're not going to talk to somebody, it's still going to have a consequence. We just don't know what those consequences are going to be. And I'm going to be digging a little bit deeper into this as we move forward. But she makes the wise decision here as well. She submits herself to a time of fasting and prayer and asks others to pray as well. She is not only saying, yes, okay, I'll go ahead and do it and run straight in. She seeks the guidance of the one that is more powerful than the king. She asks others to step in with her and to be able to pray with her and to give her that support. That is what a church is, isn't it? The church is a group of people coming together. We're supposed to share each other's burdens. We're supposed to let each other know what is going on in our own lives. Praying for ourselves, praying for others, and asking others to pray as well. Because what can we do if God is not behind it? There's very, very little that we can. If we jump ahead to Esther 5, you can see that the king does accept Esther. Now this is where it gets a little bit interesting and really shows the social wisdom that Esther had here. And we can really follow along with this. The king offers her anything she wants, up to half the kingdom. All you have to do is ask. He makes this announcement publicly in front of the rest of the nobility. Now, doesn't that seem like it would be a good time to be like, hey, yeah, you said that you wanted all my people killed because it offended this man over here. Can you stop that? But she doesn't do that. Instead, she invites the king and the man who started the problem to begin with, Haman. She invites them to a banquet. This is interesting to me. I have a problem in my life where I tend to open my mouth and talk to people and let them know what my thoughts are, regardless of who's standing around. Have any of you ever tried to stand up to something in a hostile environment? Have you ever tried to stand up and talk about your faith in a room full of atheists? Have you ever tried opening up about the Bible in a workplace? It usually doesn't go well because of why? Because usually it is the one against the many. There is a big gang up that usually happens, at least to me in that kind of situation, where you have one person telling the truth, one person trying to explain a situation, but because everyone else around you disagrees with what you were talking about, you have one voice from here, one voice from here, one voice from here. Everyone starts talking out at you at once and you can't get anything through. Now, I do believe that one plus God is a majority regardless of what you were up against. That's why I continue to speak out when I'm in those situations. Because you never know what kind of seed you might plant in somebody's mind that might start turning that tide in their lives. But it is a rough situation that not everybody can handle. So what she does here is invites them to a banquet. Now, a little bit of outside research that I did on that. This story takes place in Persia. And it is customary in Persia, at least at the time, to discuss matters of state during a banquet. Esther only invites 2 people. And those are the only 2 people who have any power to actually make a difference in the situation that they are in. She invites the king, who is the one who made the decree, and she invites Haman, who is the guy who one started the problem, and 2 was the one put in charge of handling it. She brings those 2 people together to be able to discuss what is going on. Long story short, she was able to convince both the king and Haman that she was in the right. It ended up with Haman begging for his life. He did not receive it. I'm way off of my notes here. Sorry, I told you I like to ramble. If we can go to the next page, please. The culminating point that I wanted to be able to make here is we need to be able to communicate effectively with the people that we are going to be running into in this coming year. We need to be able to communicate with people in an air of humility. Because pride will build walls where humility will tear them down. If I talk to somebody with an air of pride about what I think is right, how I am better than you, how I know better because I have God on my side, people are going to turn away from that. But if I come in with an air of humility, wanting to know how I can help somebody, if I come to them with the idea that we are all people and I might have something that I can offer you, people kind of open up to that a little bit. And with that, working in our own boots, that quote that we talked about earlier with Mordecai talking to Esther is in Esther 4:14. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your family will perish, and who knows but you have come to this royal position for such a time as this. I'm going to break that down into today's terms. If you decide to talk to somebody, or if you decide not to talk to somebody, there's going to be a consequence for that. If you decide to help somebody or decide not to help somebody, there is a consequence for that. And if you aren't the person talking to them, if you're not the person helping them, somebody else is going to talk to them. Where you might have their best interest at heart, where you might actually have the answer for the pain, for the suffering, for the mental anguish that they are going through. You might have that in this book, in your heart. The next person that talks to them might not have that. We're moving into a time of the year where many people are suffering. Many people are going through all of these holidays for the first time without friends, without family. And we can be that support system for them if we decide to be. Who knows why you are in the position that you are in? If you are in your seat right now, if you are still drawing breath, it means that God still has a plan for you. God has a reason that you are sitting where you are sitting. God has a reason for why you work where you work. God has a reason for the school that you go to, for the grocery store that you go to. God has a reason for all of that. So think about these people that I have right here. It might be a little bit of a tiny text for you in the back, but think about the people at your work. Think about your family, friends, acquaintances, the cashiers, shoppers, the coaches, teammates, classmates, teachers, neighbors, customers, bosses, the black sheep of your family, drug addicts, homeless people, pastors' kids, my kids. I understand that they're a little bit of a pain sometimes. Elders, telemarketers, car salesmen. Let's keep going there. Police, HOAs, lawyers, tax collectors, politicians, both red and blue voters. People of the rainbow persuasion. I'm sure that you know who I'm talking about there. And incredibly handsome and humble weirdos like me. Regardless of who you are around, there are people that need help. There are people that need support. Those people might be in your shoes. But we need to put our work boots on. There's a reason why I say that you need to work in your own boots rather than work in your own seat. There's an interesting theory called the 3-foot rule. That your job as a Christian is to be the support for anyone within 3 feet of you. And here's a little secret about that. If they're 4 feet away, you go like this. Boots are not only made for working, they're made for moving. It means that we need to be there and available for the people that are in our lives, whether we think we know them or not, whether we think we like them or not. Whether they are the person that stands over in the corner and spouts everything that is counterintuitive to everything you believe in, that is a person that God put in your life for a reason. That is what we need to focus on for this year. That is my challenge to you for this year. That when someone comes at you with pride, respond with humility. Respond with the ability to take what they are spitting at you and see what the problem might be behind that. Why are they treating you that way? Now, I'm not the kind of person to back down from a challenge. As some of you might know, I tend to talk a little bit more than I think sometimes. But that's my cross to bear, and my wife's. But God has us in this place at this time for a reason. If you're still drawing breath, your job is not done. Some of us have more time than others. None of us know when that time is going to be up. But I know that we need to make the most of it while we have that time left. Now, because I'm so far off my off my notes here, I don't even know if I have anything more there. So I just wanted to thank you all for listening to my ranting and my raving today.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ariel. Probably the first time this week you've actually listened to me. But please, don't forget about the people that you have here that can support you in this as well. None of us are in this alone. None of us have to bear our loads alone. And regardless of whether you see me as the handsome bearded guy with a warm smile, or if you see me as the big, ugly guy in the back that is plagued with a sense of stoicism, we're all here to help each other. And that needs to extend out of this room. And with that, I'm going to close with a prayer. Dear Father God, I have rambled incredibly today. My muddled thoughts were cast out among your sheep today. I ask that you take whatever words that you would have them hear, whatever points that would strike into their hearts. Allow your will and your word be done today. Allow that to inspire us as we move forward into this next year and continuing to help us grow in you. I pray these things in Jesus' name.